Hello guys, and welcome to another webinar. This time is for levels 10 to 13. Now, welcome to our webinars here at My English School, but this time, of course, online. So, my name is Andre Hinkson, and I'm from Barbados, which is a small island in the Caribbean. And now I'm living in Rome as an English teacher with My English School. So today we're looking at focus activity 10 to 13, US versus the UK. So we've got the differences between the US and the UK. So let's continue. Let's begin. US versus UK. Now in this focus activity, we're going to be spelling and grammar differences. When we're looking at spelling and grammar differences, vocabulary differences, and cultural differences or traditions. So cultural or traditional differences between the US and the UK. Now in Barbados, we tend to use mostly the UK English because we were a British colony. So we use a lot of British or UK English, but we do use some US vocabulary and spelling as well. So there's a mixture, but generally we use the UK English. Okay, so let's get started and look at the differences between the US and the UK. Now try to guess which spellings are British and which ones are American. Yeah, which ones are from the UK and which ones are from the US. Now we've got favorite, we've got jewelry, center, we've got aging, cancelled, theater, organization, color, catalog, and license. Now we have to guess which ones are US and which ones are UK. So let's get started. So the first one, favorite. Now this one is spelled with a U. So generally those words that have OU are normally from the UK. So favorite, this spelling of favorite is the UK. Exactly. So it's spelled with a U, yeah, and the American is spelled without the U. So for UK, it's F-A-V-O-U-R-I-T-E, and for the US, it's F-A-V-O-R-I-T-E. So normally the US leave the U out of the word, while the UK uses the U. Okay, so let's look at jewelry now. So this one is spelled J-E-W-E-L-R-Y, and this one is, which one is it? It's the US. So this is the US spelling of jewelry. Now, the British or the UK spelling of jewelry is, let me put it in the chat. We've got the UK jewelry. One moment. For the UK version, it's a little different. It's spelled J-E-W-E-L-L-E-R-Y. So that is the UK spelling, while the US spelling is different. It usually uses one L instead of two. So we have the UK jewelry right here. Yep. That's the UK spelling, while the US is J-E-W-E-L-R-Y. So that's the difference. Now let's look at center. Center is another one that's very different in the UK and the US. Now this one is spelled C-E-N-T-R-E, and this is basically the UK spelling. With the US spelling, it's spelled C-E-N-T-E-R. So basically, the R and the E switches places. You switch them. So we've got like center, we've got like liter, we've got kilometer. So normally for the US and the UK, they switch places, the R and the E. Cool. Now let's look at aging. So this one is spelled A-G-E-I-N-G. Yeah. This one is the UK version. Normally, the US one is spelled without the E. So the US version would be A-G-I-N-G, aging, without the E. So that's the US spelling, aging. On to cancelled. Now this word has one L. The other nationality uses two L's. So which one is this one? Is it the US or the UK with one L? If you guessed it correctly, it's the US. So it's the US spelling. They use one L, while the UK uses two L. So cancel, C-A-N-C-E-L-L-E-D, cancelled for the UK with two L's. Good. Next, we have theater. Remember what I said about center? That it switches places, the R and E switches places. Well, in this case, theater, ER, is the US spelling, while the UK spelling is Theatre, theater. It's the UK spelling. Now, let's move on to organization. This one tricks a lot of people, even in English. Sometimes you don't remember which one is UK and which one is the US. Organization. Now, this one is spelled with an S. The other spelling is with the letter Z. So in this case, organization with an S is the UK. Yeah, it's the British form of the word. Organization with an S. And for the UK, we have organization with a Z. Gotta spell it correctly. Organization with a Z for the US. Sorry, for the US, not the UK, the US, sorry. That should be the US. Organization. So ignore the first one. The real one is the US. US organization with the Z, while organization with the S is for the UK. Next word, we've got color. This one is a very popular one as well. Normally, in my country, in Barbados, we use it with the U. Now, with the U, remember, it's the UK spelling. So this one, without the U, is the US spelling. And the UK is with the U. Color. Yep. UK is with the U, US without the U. Next, we've got catalog. Yeah, this is another one, catalog. This one is spelled with an E at the end, UE. So which one do you think it is? Is it the UK or is it the US spelling? I think it's the UK spelling. Let's see. Correct. So catalog, UE, is with the UK spelling, while the US spelling is C-A-T-A-L-O-G. Catalog, without the U and without the E. So US is catalog, C-A-T-A-L-O-G, while the UK spelling is C-A-T-A-L-O-G-U-E. Now let's look at the next word. We've got license. So this one, we've got L-I-C-E-N-S-E. Now, which one is it? Which one do you think it is? UK or the US? In this case, license with the C is the US. So if you thought the UK, you were absolutely wrong. In this case, it's the US spelling. So the US spelling is L-I-C-E-N-S-E, and the UK spelling is L-I-C-E-N-C-E. So the S is replaced by a C. Here we go. So UK is spelled without the S. The S is replaced by C. So that is the UK spelling. Now, let's move on. So those are the different spellings between the US and the UK. So remember, the US spelling for favorite is Favorite. That's without the U. The UK spelling of jewelry has two L's with another E added. So Jewellery. Center in the US, the R and the E switches places. So we've got Center. Aging for the US is without the E. Cancelled for the UK has two L's. Theater in the UK, you switch the R and the E again. You've got theater, Theatre. Organization in the UK is with the S, while in the US, they use a Z or a Z. So in this case, the US uses Z, the UK uses Z as the pronunciation. For color, the US uses no U, but the UK includes a U in the name. So color in the UK, COLOUR, while in the US, it's without the U. Catalog. Catalog in the UK has UE, while in the US, it's without the U and the E. And license in the UK, is with C and not S. So we got UK, LICENCE, while the US, we have LICENSE. So those are the differences between the US and the UK spelling for these words. There are many words that change spelling between the US and the UK. So take note of these ones, and remember, it does not matter which one you use because both are correct. Now let's look at grammar differences between the US and the UK. So, how would you say the following in the US or in UK English? You want to ask if your friend has a sister. So let's see how we ask that question in the US and in the UK. So US, do you have a sister? So in this case, we use the closed question with the auxiliary verb to do, but we use the present simple. In the UK, have you got a sister? We use the auxiliary verb to have. Yeah, but not only to have, but have got is what we use for the UK or the British English. So have you got a sister? While in the US, we use do you have a sister? So in this case, these are the differences between the two types of English. Remember, it doesn't matter which one you use because both are correct. Now let's look at this one. The UK and US are playing a football match. So the UK says winning or losing. So we've got US, the other team, which one is correct? The other team is winning for the US. For the UK, the other team, are losing. So here we have the differences. We have the singular verb of to be, is. The other team is winning. But for the UK, they say the other team are losing. Very strange, right? So for the US, they use a singular form. They see the team as a singular noun. While in the UK, they see the team as a plural noun. So the other team are losing. But remember, you can use both. Both are correct. So don't be nervous if you use both of them because they're all correct. So let's move on now to this one. You're sweaty, meaning you have moisture on you. You're sweaty. Maybe you were exercising. So you're sweaty from a workout, from an exercise. What do you think they say in the US? First one, I'd like to, a shower. And in the UK, I'd like to, a shower. So which one do you think, which verb do you think we use for the US and for the UK? Well, in this situation, for the US, we use I'd like to take a shower, while in the UK, they use I'd like to have a shower. So those are the differences between the US and the UK. So for the US, they use the verb to take with shower, and they use the verb to have in the UK with shower. But I use both. In my country, we use both take and we use have. Excellent, great. So remember, look at the form of the verbs before. Let's go back, sorry. So we've got is. For team, in the US, they see the team as one singular unit, while in the UK, they use the plural verb of the verb to be, which is are. The other team are losing. While for this one, the US uses the verb to take a shower, while the UK uses to have a shower. Excellent. Let's continue with vocabulary differences. So there are many differences between the US and the UK vocabulary. So let's try to find the US or the UK equivalent for each word. Now let's look at it. So the first one, normally the word not clockwise, they use two different words in the US and the UK. So we have the negative or the opposite of clockwise. So not clockwise in the US means, let's try it out after this, counterclockwise. So the opposite of clockwise in the US is counterclockwise, while in the UK it's anti-clockwise or anti-clockwise. So those are the different vocabulary in the US and the UK. So not clockwise, which is the opposite, means counterclockwise in the US, while in the UK it is anti-clockwise or anti-clockwise. Let's look at number two. Not a house, but an apartment in the US, while in the UK they use flat. Basically, they're the same thing. So an apartment in the US is called a flat in the UK. Now let's look at number three, autumn. This is an important one too, because there are differences in the US and the UK. So autumn is also known as what word in the US? Autumn. So autumn is used in the UK, but there's another word they use in the US. When you think of autumn, you think of the colors, the colors of the leaves on the trees in autumn. And in autumn, those leaves fall. So in that sense, the US version of autumn is fall, because it represents the falling of the leaves from the trees. So that's why they use fall in the US and not autumn. So cool. So you learned something new today. Now let's look at number four. Now in the US, they eat French fries, but in the UK, they call it something else, or they call them something else. So US French fries, but in the UK, what do they call it? So remember, there's a specific dish or specific type of food in the UK, fast food in the UK, that they use with fish and French fries, but it's called something else. It's called fish and, I don't know if some of you might have traveled to England or to the UK and ate this particular dish or food. They usually say not fish and French fries, they say fish and chips. So they're French fries in the US, but they're called chips in the UK. Now, chips in the US, the word chips in the US means the potato chips in the bag. Yeah, in the UK, they call them crisps. Yeah, the ones in the bag, the very thin potato fried is called chips in the UK, but they're called chips in the US, but they're called crisps in the UK. So let's go through it again. In the US, they call French fries, and in the UK, they call them chips. But chips in the US are called crisps in the UK, which are the ones in the bag. Yeah? Excellent. So let's move on. Let's look at cultural differences. So how strongly do you agree or disagree with these statements? So let's talk about cultural differences. When we travel all over the world, we encounter different cultural customs and traditions. And some of us don't know the actual traditions and customs of those countries. So it's always important to know or to research those customs before you travel to another country. Now, in this case, many Americans are hyphenated Americans, meaning, for example, you have nationalities like Italian American, Chinese American, African American, and often refer to themselves as such. Whereas Britons or Brits are simply British. So in this case, they don't say Italian British or Chinese British or African British. They usually just use British because they see everyone as equal. They identify as British. But in America, it's like a segregation. There are labels. You're either Italian American, Chinese American, Black American, African American. So there are a lot of hyphenated nationalities in America, especially in the US. In my country, we don't have the hyphenated nationalities. We only have the nationality. In my country, our nationality is Barbadian. So anyone who's born in Barbados is called a Barbadian. Whether you're Chinese descent or Italian descent, you're still considered a Barbadian. While in the US, they usually use the hyphenated nationalities, Italian American, Chinese American, etc. So those are the cultural differences one of the cultural differences between the US and the UK in terms of identifying nationality. So Americans, next one, Americans prefer coffee and cookies, while Brits prefer tea and biscuits. Yeah. In my country, we prefer tea and biscuits as well in Barbados because our culture is based off of the British culture. But we do have African culture as well, but it's predominantly dominated by the British culture. So we too like tea and biscuits, but the Americans love coffee and cookies. So for us, we don't call cookies, we don't say cookies, we say biscuits. So yeah, that's the difference between those cultures as well. The next one, Brits prefer dry wit and sarcasm for their humor of choice, whereas Americans prefer stand-up or sketch comedy. It is true. The Brits prefer dry wit, very, very dry jokes, very dry comedy. They love sarcasm as well for the humor. So it's more like an intellectual kind of humor the Brits like, very intellectual, while the Americans love the stand-up comedy, telling jokes in front of a crowd, or sketch comedy where you have maybe people playing a part. Yeah, so those are the differences between the British cultural humor and the American humor as well. So they're different. So let's look at US versus UK. Now we can't really play this one because it requires a lot of work and it requires a number of people. But let's continue to look at some other cultural differences between the US and the UK. Or maybe some spellings. Let's look at some more spellings between the US and UK. Let's look for some other words that we can possibly use. US versus UK spelling. One moment. US versus UK spelling. So we can do more practice in finding the difference between those words. It's very, very important sometimes because if you go to the US, they're like weird. If you write the words with the U like the British do, then it's like, oh. But at the same time, it's grammatically correct. It's just the difference between the US and the UK. So let's take a look at some more words. So let's bring up that particular exercise. So we have a comprehensive list of American and British spellings. Yep. So let's take a look at that. I know you're not able to see it clearly because it's kind of minimized. So let me increase the zoom so you can see it better. Alrighty, let's see if this works. Okay, so let's try it out. So there are about 1,800 roots and derivatives. Some of these are alternative, not preferred spellings among one group or another. For example, Canadians being particular mercurial. Check out the main page for a review of the types of spelling differences. So we're going to look at the US and the UK for now. But normally the Canadian spellings are mixed because they use both the US and the UK spelling. So it depends. But in this case, let's look at the UK and the US. So we've got accessorize. So meaning to, for example, to accessorize your outfit. Maybe you're going out for dinner or something, and you want to put on accessories, maybe a watch, maybe some earrings for the ladies. So you accessorize, which is the verb, to accessorize. In the UK, they spell it with the S, while in the US, they spell it with a Z. So we've got the UK, ACCESSORISE, and in the US, they use it with the Z. So they replace the S, the second S, with the Z. Cool. So now let's look at the next one. We've got accessories, or accessorized rather. Same thing. The UK uses an S, while the US uses a Z. Accessories. Okay, so let's look at accessorizing. It's the same thing, just using the ing form, but it changes to the Z or S depending on the UK or the US. Now let's look at acclimatize. Acclimatize. So again, we have S for the UK, while the Z for the US. Now let's look at some other vocabulary. We've got aeroplane. Here we have a popular spelling. Aeroplane in the UK, which is AEROPLANES, while in the US, they spell it AIRPLANES. So you see the big difference. They changed the E and the O and just put an I. So airplanes, while the UK uses aeroplanes. Here we have, what's another one we can use? So the aesthetic, the look and the, how should I say, the visual look of something, the aesthetic. So in the UK, they use AESTHETIC, while in the US, they take off the A. So they just spell it ESTHETIC, aesthetic, while in the UK, they use aesthetic with an A. Let's look at another one. Let's look at aluminium. This is a very tricky one for even some English-speaking people. So for the UK, we have aluminium, and I think for the US, you have aluminum. So the pronunciation is different and the spelling is different. So for the UK, they use aluminium with two I's, and then with the US, they use aluminum with one I. So in the UK, they have IUM, but in the US, they leave out the I. So it's just ALUMINUM. Aluminium for the UK and aluminum for the US. Now let's continue. Let's look at, let's look at a simpler word, analyze. So we've got analyze here. We've got AN, which is this one, ANALYSE for the UK spelling, and we have ANALYZE for the US. So for the UK, they use an S, while for the US, they use a Z, or in British, Z. Another one, let's look at apologize. I want to say sorry, I want to apologize. So for the UK, they use it again with an S, while for the US, they use it with a Z. Yeah, so you see a pattern here. So wherever there's an S, wherever there's an SE, the US uses a Z. So ZE for US or SE for the UK. Let's look at appetizer. It's the same thing as well. So we've got appetizer with an S right here. And then we have appetizer with a Z for the US. So the UK is with an S, the UK with a Z. Now let's look at this one. Armor. This one at the bottom, armor. So here we have armor with a U, which is the UK version. And then for the US, there's no U. So remember, normally words with OU in the UK, in the US, they take out the U. So it's just the O. So that's another example as well. And this one, this is an irregular one as well. We've got ask, an axe. An axe is this tool, a tool you use to cut a tree, an axe. So in the UK, they use it with an E at the end, but in the US, no E. So normally the pattern here is usually that the US uses a shorter version of the word, while the UK uses the longer original version of the word. Yeah, so a little laziness on the American part in terms of the vocabulary, the spelling of the vocabulary. So it's shorter in the US while it's longer in the UK. So these are just some examples of differences in terms of spelling in the US and the UK. Now let's look and see if we can look for differences UK versus US in terms of customs. Let's get some differences in terms of customs between the British and between the US. So let's look at an experience that someone had between the US and the UK, basically giving us differences in terms of traditions and cultures. Okay, let's see if I can magnify. No, thank you. So the UK and the US may share a common language. Yeah, we do share the same language, English language, but the cultural differences can make the two places feel as if they are worlds apart, and it is true. When it comes to work-life balance and careers, there are some major differences between Americans and Brits. As a British person living and working in the US, of course, this is someone's experience, they found that one of the biggest cultural shocks was Americans' attitudes about vacation days and the lack of paid time off available to workers. So in America, the land of the free, as it's called, and the home of the brave, where your rights include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, except if your pursuit of happiness takes you away from your desk for a few days. Now, when it comes to paid time off, Americans are dealt a pretty unfair hand, according to this person's experience. So, for example, this person packed their bags 2 years ago in a shipping container and said goodbye to the British countryside, and they moved to New York. And after that, they realized the differences in culture from TV, from movies to politics. There were many differences between the UK and the US. So despite all this person's preparation, and even with a big book about American customs, the relocation was a little different, or is not what this person expected. There were differences between their old life in the UK and their new life in the United States. So some of the differences between the cultures in the US and UK basically are television, the television programs, maybe the types of comedies, the types of action films. So many different aspects can be very different between the two cultures. Uh, yes, British and Americans speak the same language, but there are many differences, as you mentioned before, in spelling, in vocabulary, and of course, in phrases we use, expressions we use as well. So there are many differences between the US and the UK. So this person says another difference was that Americans will talk to you absolutely anywhere. So they say hi, they say morning. I've never had an experience like that, but this person's experience is that. So this person is saying that basically the Americans are a little more friendlier, more so than the Brits. Maybe on the other hand, they might be friendlier in my experience. Americans are friendlier, but the British are a little more, how should I say, have a lot. I don't want to be too too harsh on the Americans, but the British have more of like good etiquette in terms of maybe eating at a table, at a dinner, even some phrases when greeting people. They're very polite in that sense. While the Americans are very casual, very, they love life, so they don't care much about anything else. So they're a little more free. Not that they don't care about anything else, they're freer. So they tend not to be the most polite, but they're very casual with you. While the Brits, on the other hand, are a little more polite and have a lot of etiquette in different situations. So, but each culture has their own positives and negatives in this case. Uh, let's see what other differences this person mentioned. The office culture at work. They mentioned about the American office culture compared to the UK office culture. So this person says that Americans normally dream. They dream a lot, and that's part of the American dream. That unwavering belief that anyone can be successful if they're determined and willing to work hard. And normally it seems that Americans work very hard. They work a lot, hardly any time to, in some cases, relax or to do other things for personal life. But they work very hard because working hard leads to success. So in this case, Americans are a little more hardworking compared to the British. And this is a British person speaking about the differences between the UK and the US. The attitude towards vacation is different as well. Full-time workers are legally entitled to take at least 28 days of paid vacation a year, while on the other hand, British workers usually take 20 days of vacation per year. So the difference in taking vacation and holidays is a big difference between, not very big, but there's some differences between the time that they're required to take vacation days as well. So just looking at some real life situations and real life differences between the cultures of different countries or different societies. So in this case, between the US and the UK. So let's review. Let's review this. Let me go back so I can share the slides with you, the presentation. So for the spellings, remember we have, let's go back. We've got favorite, differences between these particular words. We've got favorite in the UK with a U, while the US without the U. Jewelry in the UK has two L's, but in the US they use one L. Center in the UK is RE, but in the US the R and the E switches places, is ER. Aging in the UK is with an E, while the US is without an E. Cancelled has two L's. Again, in the US they use one L. Theater, same thing. The R and the E switches. In the US, they use ER, while the UK, they use RE. Organization. Now, a lot of these words, like this have an S in the UK, but a Z in the US, or Z, as the British would say. Color is another one that uses the U in the UK, but without the U in the US. Catalog has UE at the end in the UK, but in the US, there's no U and no E. And finally, license in the UK uses CENCE, while in the US, LICENSE in this case. So the UK uses the C while the US uses the S. And again, let's look at the grammar differences. So here, do you have a sister? They use the auxiliary to do. And in the UK, they use have got in this case. But remember again, if you use both are correct. There's no problem. Then we've got winning and losing, UK and US. We've got the other team is winning in the US, but the other team are losing in the UK. So they look at the subject, which is team, in the UK as a plural form, while in the US, they use team as a singular unit. So that's the difference. I'd like to take a shower in the US, but I'd like to have a shower in the UK. So those are the differences between grammar points in US and UK. But remember, the more you know both grammar points and both types of vocabulary in US and UK is better, because both are correct. You can use them in any situation. So that's it, guys. So remember to keep reviewing those differences in the US and the UK, but always remember that you can use both wherever you go. They're both used internationally. So if you go to the US and you use the British spelling, it's okay, because it's still grammatically correct and it's all still English. So keep practicing, keep reviewing the grammar differences, the vocabulary differences, and the spelling differences between the US and the UK. So stay tuned as well to our YouTube page for more MyS webinars. Remember, we're continuing to help you to grow in learning English, and this is something we're offering you because I know it's impossible to get outside and to communicate with people. So I'm very happy that you can join us, and of course, see you next time. Bye.